Well, pot smoking or pot vending machines come to your town pretty soon. I did not mean to say pot smoking because that's the confusion actually between smoking pot and medical marijuana is quite a difference. And this is a company that actually can possibly get this going in San Diego. It's been going on in a couple other states already, and it may actually take off like everywhere in the United States if people are awake and realize the medicinal benefits of marijuana. Because actually, in 1938, I believe it was, when they passed and made hemp and marijuana illegal, it turned out that the medical establishment, the actual American Medical Association, was against it because they were using all kinds of cannabis in healing with their medicines for decades and decades and decades, all the way back to the 1800s. So we all know what the deal is. It was actually the pharmaceutical companies in conjunction with the oil companies, because most things that come from the pharmaceutical companies are in conjunction with the oil companies in DuPont and Rockefeller Standard Oil, so they hate this stuff. But anyway, it looks like this is spreading, and I got to say something else. The company that's bringing this to fruition is Medicap, I believe it is. Medbox, excuse me, Medbox Inc. And I looked at this a while back too, and just as a reminder, some people didn't see this on Medbox Inc. If you bought this stock back here in early November, it was between $1 and $4. Sometimes it was even under $1. Look what happened to this spike that occurred here in sometime in November. $220 a share. In other words, the stock went from $1 to $220. It spiked that high. It spiked that high. That's why I'm looking at so many stocks and seeing maybe there's going to be a pullback in one of these hemp or medical marijuana type places. This is Medbox, and then you should buy it. But it's been floating around $1 to $4, and then it went to $220, and currently it's at $32. So hey, if you put $1,000 on that, you'd have $200,000 inside of no time. Or if you put $10,000, you'd have over $2 million. Amazing, huh? If the market could handle that. So we talk about silver, but there's other deals out there. But anyway, this is on Medbox, and they're looking to do this in San Diego, and more than 100 Medbox machines now operate in California, Colorado, and Canada. Previous plans to bring them to San Diego were nixed when the U.S. Attorney General's office cracked down on dispensaries here in 2011. As I remind you, under the Obama administration, you imagine that this guy supposedly doesn't care about that, and he's, it's under his administration. That's the U.S. Attorney's office. So you figure who's behind that. He could stop that in 2 seconds. He's a sellout, baby. He's a sellout. One of the biggest criticism facing medical marijuana dispensaries, especially from federal prosecutors, lunkheads, is that they are engaged in a for-profit drug-selling operation rather than servicing needy patients as non-profits. Well, let's talk about for-profit drug-selling operations. Isn't that the medical pharmaceutical company which kills more people every year? Ha ha. It's not funny. They kill more people every year with legal pharmaceuticals than even the illicit drugs do. Amazing. But the federal prosecutors, I wonder what the hell the deal is with the government sometimes. It takes it's not just the government, it takes a certain kind of person that's evil to work and think like that and have a myopic brain and only look one way. Usually you'll find religious people. This is why I have beef with religious people, because actually very religious people many times seem to be against this type of thing. They call it the hippie culture and all this type of stuff. Actually, it's the healing culture. Medicinal marijuana heals. So, you got these, actually you look at what the apparatus is behind the oil industry, the medical industry. It's myopic-brained lunkheads, and they work for the IRS too, whatever. So dispensaries have been frequent targets for robberies, they said. And that's not really true, because the machine itself would be very difficult to rob because it's like an 800-pound armor-plated machine. Whereas if you walk in a store, you can. But the thing is, you can rob any store, right? You can rob a pharmacy. You can rob a pharmacy in Walgreens or Walmart. So, what's the big deal? There's no difference between that. So the feds don't really have an argument, because with how it's basically controlled is medical marijuana operations must provide a state-issued ID card and a fingerprint to gain access, or the machines won't dispense more than that has been prescribed by a doctor. Each transaction is recorded. So, it's well controlled. It's well controlled. So, just like back in 1938 when the AMA was telling everybody in the government, why are you making medical marijuana illegal? That's going to kill patients because we don't have medicine to treat them. They didn't care. They didn't care. It was competition to oil interest and pharmaceuticals and everything else that they had a racket with. They couldn't grow. In other words, no racket when you grow a plant. Anybody can grow a plant. There's no racket there. But interesting also, this is an interesting field because you might find, some of these stocks, and it just varies. It's dangerous, though. I'm going to say it is dangerous, but you might find so many stocks to be so volatile that if there's a hard pullback, you might want to put a small amount of money in one of these stocks and see if it has a nice gain on it, too. It might actually be a good investment. This would have been a better investment if you bought this back in October and sold it in November at $220 a share. This would have been a better investment than anything you ever got out of silver in a million years because it went up 220 times inside of like a week. And if you knew about that, God, I don't know how that did that, and I don't know, that was one of the craziest escalations of stock prices I ever seen in my life, and that's from Medbox Inc. So basically, they just set up dispensaries for, where you can say buy the herb here and all this type of stuff. Actually, in my opinion, it ought to be available in the supermarkets. You ought to be able to buy it like sprinkles, like you could sprinkle it on your food, because a little bit of this stuff is actually probably very good for you. It's like anything. You go excessive one way, it's no good. People smoke pot every day and all day. I notice they get very lethargic and they kind of lose all their ambitions. So obviously that's not good. But I think a little bit of anything, a lot of something like this that's been around throughout the ages as a medicine is probably a great thing. So you might see this, we got to basically keep fighting for this stuff because you make people aware that, this is actually not something where the hippies are smoking it because, I got to ad-lib a little bit on that because if you look back in the 60s, the Rockefellers were very shrewd on how they got the Christian right against marijuana because they basically, the establishment actually pushed the anti-establishment movement, and what happened there was they caused like two sides, you damn hippies smoking marijuana, and they got the other, on the other side saying, oh, this is freedom and all this, you should be allowed to smoke the herb and stuff. Well, basically, if you look at it in a really rational way, that the American medical establishment was using this all throughout the 1800s and all the way into 1938 when they started passing laws against it. So it's like, there is a bona fide use for it. But they make it look like, the establishment actually pushed the anti-establishment to get the Christians and the right-wing type people against this herb. To make it look like it's associated with lazy people that don't want to do this and do that. In actuality, that's not true. Not true. Because actually, this is one of the biggest cancer curers going. So, watch the shrewdness more than anything. It's not like you just got to bring a fact to light. You got to actually defeat the devil himself, and the devil is shrewd as all hell, and the guys out on the top, like the Rockefellers. The Rockefellers were devils because in New York State, what they did was they went ahead and put such hard penalties on marijuana that it was almost like it killed somebody. That's how tough it was. But at the same time, it was the establishment that was pushing the anti-establishment rules out there. So the anti-establishment movement, they were actually pushing both sides. So to get this legal, it's going to take a lot more. My point of bringing up all that stuff was this. To get this legal, it's going to take a lot more shrewdness and exposure of what the real establishment is than you would believe. It's not just a matter of educating people. It's a matter of, basically fighting the establishment and just showing exactly what their games are because they're lunkheads. And it's like you also have to fight the people that are lunkheads even on a smaller level because it seems to be that many very conservative right-wing type people, and I guess I lean a little more right-wing, but I'm not a lunkhead like they are, will look at this stuff and say, oh, that's horrible, that's hippie medicine, and it's like a joke to them. It's a joke, It's a joke. So I don't know. I guess if it's not available, I guess they're going to die of cancer. So maybe that's the way it's going to kind of work out. But this is interesting that it's going to turn out that we might have more and more of these machines that are dispersing medical marijuana throughout the country, and it's going to be going in San Diego pretty soon. And this may take off a hell of a lot more than you think. And also watch those stocks on some of these herbal companies like the medical marijuana. And this was Medbox, and it could actually say pull back. If it ever pull back to $4, you might want to get it because look out at these things. It seems like it's going to drift way back down, and maybe patiently wait a little while. And if it pulls back very hard, you might want to buy this, and it'll maybe take off again. But that was this particular stock was actually one of the most far-ranging stocks going as far as from a low to a high inside of a week. Amazing, from like about $1 to $220 in less than a week. Amazing.